Now, I'll be honest, the eastern part on the outside of the map is really boring, and now, I'll be honest, the eastern part on the outside of the map is really boring, and
So that was a fucking lie.
here on the Unexplored Mojave, I always try to do a lot of research and to explore things thoroughly. In my last video, I said that the eastern part of the map, at least the outer parts, the outside part of the map, was not so interesting, but that was kind of not true. And upon, well, not research, but upon further exploring, I did discover that the eastern part has a lot of interesting things in it, and that's what this video is dedicated to. Huge shout out to Chungus666, who's been one of my biggest followers and fans of this channel. He's been supporting me since the very beginning. Thank you so much for your comment and letting me know. And because of that, this video is titled The Great Wall of the Mojave. But before we jump into it, I actually did encounter the Great Wall during a previous video. Not too long ago, I released a video called Outside the South Vegas Ruins. In that video, I escaped the South Vegas Ruins and explored some of the areas outside of the map, including the easternmost part of the map, and here is what we discovered. I got lucky, I flew up really high into the air, and I was able to get over the invisible barrier that would normally block you from leaving. I decided to make my way to the edge of the world to see what it looked like. And, well, not too surprisingly, you just find that endless ocean, as you would when you leave the Mojave Wasteland, right? If you, leave from Morningstar Cave or something like that. But, you know, this kind of interesting, and thought I would go ahead and show it off because I never really explored outside of that area. Now, in that video, though, I failed to mention the giant wall that was before me. I just figured it was a feature of the kind of different map where the South Vegas Ruins is. Obviously, it's not actually in the Mojave because there's a loading zone. However, that is kind of true and kind of not, and I made some very interesting discoveries by making this video. So, let's jump on into it. Now, to begin our journey, we began just east of the Devil's Throat. As you can see here, we're actually at the crater, the Lake Mead crater, which is just east of the Devil's Throat. That's where we started our journey. So we started making our way east, and as I made my way, one thing that really stood out that was very interesting was this large canyon in just the middle of these mountain ranges here, as you can see. Now, upon further inspection and looking down the canyon a bit more with my anti-material rifle, I discovered this is actually attached to Lake Mead. So this canyon is actually not really a canyon. Well, I mean, it could be, but it's actually Lake Mead. So that's kind of interesting, and Lake Mead extends really far east over here. I know Lake Mead is quite large, so it might be somewhat realistic as to, where it is. And the lake does something really interesting here with the mountains, and as I was making my way over there, well, New Vegas does what New Vegas does best. Almost perfectly on cue with the ambient noises of the game. That is not unsettling at all. My game crashed, which actually hadn't happened to me in a long time, so I wasn't really ready for it. I made a huge rookie mistake, and I forgot to save for a long time. So I had to make my way all the way back to the canyon, which was a huge pain in the ass. Do not do what an otter does. Make sure you save your game, especially if you're exploring out of bounds. Anyways, I made my way back to where I was, and there is a very large mountain range here. However, the mountain range is cut in half by the canyon, or as we established, Lake Mead, and I found this very interesting. So I started climbing my way up the mountain range. Just wanted to mention, when you're outside the map, you kind of do a lot of climbing, and my wife was like, "What game are you playing? It's just like a climbing simulator." And when I told her it was Fallout, well, she didn't really believe me, but yes, when you are outside of the map, it is like a climbing simulator for, well, much of it. Anyways, I made my way to the top of the mountain range, which was a bit easier than I expected. And this mountain here almost looks like a volcano. We have this little crater here, which I thought was kind of cool. So if I had to name this mountain, it would just be, well, Volcano Mountain. But we can see over here, Lake Mead indeed cuts all the way through this giant mountain range, which is quite interesting. Now, this mountain range is very large, and originally I thought I was going to name it the Great Wall, but Chungus already named the smaller wall the Great Wall, so I decided I will name this mountain range the Otter Mountain Range. Seems like a fitting name to me. Anyways, I made my way down the mountain range, across this very large valley, and then we can find the Great Wall of the Mojave, which is what Chungus 666 was referring to. And this wall is very interesting. But first, when I visited here, when I went outside the South Vegas ruins, I realized that the South Vegas ruins map, or that loading zone, everything is just much smaller. Whereas here in the actual Mojave, everything is much bigger. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Because this wall, when you're in the normal Mojave wasteland, is far too big for you to climb. So I started reload dashing to try and get up to the top of the wall, but because there's nothing like to bounce off of, it's really hard to launch yourself. And I was about to actually give up hope and just walk down the entire length beside the wall, but then I got incredibly lucky with this reload dash, and it literally put me right on top of the wall. That is just magical. And once on top of the Great Wall of the Mojave, I was pleasantly surprised to find that this wall is so easy to walk. While there are elevation changes, like for whatever reason, this part of the wall is really high up. Don't know why that is. Other parts are much lower. But the top part of the wall is flat and incredibly easy to transverse, which was music to my ears, which means I could just easily walk around on the wall while listening to some YouTube videos in the background. Really nice, really kind of relaxing. And when I reach the northern end of the wall, it just gradually goes into the ground and you just easily walk off. And then if you fall into the ocean, it's not a problem because you can just swim back into the wall and it magically puts you back at the top. So kind of nice to know that you can easily get on top of the Great Wall of the Mojave at the northern end. But of course, I'm insane. I wanted to see the southern end of the wall, so I started making my way all the way down to the south. And yeah, I guess it's a little boring, but again, you have a YouTube video playing, not so bad. Now, as I approach the Lake Mead Gap, as we mentioned before, Lake Mead cuts through the Otter mountain range. I just decided to see what the sunrise looks like from this part of the map, because of course, you know, normally the sunrise is over like the Mojave and over the mountains. So I wanted to see what it looks like, and you can kind of see the sun starting to poke up out of the sky. It just looks really bizarre, I thought. And then here it is sped up as the sun slowly rises over Null. Just kind of a really cool and unique sight that I had never seen before. And here's a very beautiful shot of my character in his underwear, just staring at the sun. Now, continuing our path down, I did make one interesting discovery along the wall. Right here, there's some kind of weird gap in the wall. Don't know why. One theory I have is perhaps the Great Wall of the Mojave is just a smaller copy of the Otter mountain range. Don't know how true or accurate that might be, but that's my theory. But I fell down the crevice and I had a very embarrassing kind of death, but easy to get around the crevice because you can just jump and fall into the wall, and then you spawn on top. While you're up here, I would recommend saving a lot. You never know when you're going to die or the game is going to crash. Anyways, I kept making my way down to the southern end of the wall. This is sped up incredibly fast because, well, it might be pretty boring to just watch an otter walking along a wall, or it might be kind of cute. At the very end of the wall, it gets really, really high for some reason. Not sure why. And then just like the north, it gradually lowers into the ground beneath you. Now on the southern end, the wall ends a little bit earlier, further away from the southern edge than it does in the north. Now if you make your way all the way to the southeast edge, there's this really weird crevice. Be careful because I died here, unfortunately, because I forgot to save. Again, freaking idiot, don't follow an otter. And I fell down the crevice, and then I died a very embarrassing death. So there we have it, folks. We have some additions to our outside of the Mojave map from our last episode. We can include the Great Wall of the Mojave, so named by Chungus 666. We have the Otter mountain range, and we have the Lake Mead Gap, which for whatever reason cuts straight through the Otter mountain range. I think it's pretty cool. So the eastern part of the map actually has a lot of interesting things going on, and I was pleasantly surprised when I found all of this. Huge shout out to Chungus666 and everyone who watched the last video, leaving comments, ideas. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any ideas why this part of the map is designed in this way, please post it in the comment section below. I'd be really interested to hear ideas about why the eastern part of the map looks like this, but no other part of the map does. I think it's really strange, kind of creepy in a weird way. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. Guys, have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, future locations? Of course, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time.